Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Bobber Academy. This is episode 2 about HIP 51. We're here to help educate people around really complex topics, especially HIP 51. So we've brought on a special guest who was also in one of our first episodes around the 5G setup and install and working with the Bobber 500. Our guest is Max. He's an avid community member, and he's been helping people understand and learn the intricacies of HIP 51 within the Helium Discord and online. I'll let Max introduce himself now so he can tell you a little bit about himself.
Happy to be back, Jess. The first episode was very fun. We got to talk 5G. Now we get to talk a little bit more HIP 51 this time. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Max. I started in the Helium community back when there was about 10,000 hotspots on the network. Got a hotspot deployment and management company that I started. Been in the LoRaWAN space for over a year and a half now, and very excited about 5G. It's been quite a long time coming. I remember back in February of 2021 when we kind of realized that this may be a possibility to add 5G to Helium, and then in May when it was HIP 27 was added to essentially add 5G to Helium, and then over the last year since then we've had HIP 37 come up. It didn't really work out. Trying to figure out how to fit 5G in, and now HIP 51, which was added in or first proposed in January, makes it so that we can add multiple networks onto this network. Ever since that was kind of proposed, I love that idea of having multiple tokens, multiple networks that kind of both operate on their own, but also within the Helium ecosystem. And because of that, I've been able to take a pretty big role as a community member in the crafting of HIP 51 and suggesting a lot of the changes that have gone into it. And I think where we're at now, it's actually a pretty incredible HIP, and in my opinion, one of the biggest HIPs to affect the Helium community since it was first founded.
Yes, I also agree as well, Max. HIP 51 is definitely one of the most important HIPs we've had in a while. And I want to go over why this HIP, what it means to you, and why it's essential for the growth of the network. And we're going to cover that and all of the different components of this HIP as best we can. It is not an easy HIP to understand, so we've tried to build some visualizations for you to see what we're talking about as we talk about this. I felt like if we just did a conversation interview only, you would miss out on a lot of the very key points and intricacies within the HIP. And a lot of this is visual too. So hopefully this explainer that we go through today will give you a better understanding of HIP 51 and the nuanced components of it. So let's get started. So the first thing we need to know is, what is a DAO? A DAO is a decentralized autonomous organization. It's an entity with no centralized leadership. Decisions get made from the bottom up, governed by the community, organized around a specific set of rules enforced on the blockchain or on a blockchain. Helium decided at some point recently that we should switch to a DAO. We currently have our own blockchain, and we didn't really need a DAO because we only had one token to mine. And in the very beginning, we were mining LoRaWAN, using LoRaWAN to mine veHNT. So there was only one token. And as the network has been expanding, we've created new HIPs and gotten into different areas of the network that we've been planning on expanding into. And now we're moving into 5G. And most recently, we learned about a whole slew of different areas that Helium will now start to cover, including Wi-Fi 6, 5G, VPN, CDN, and a whole bunch of other terms that we'll get into very shortly. But in order to do that, we had to agree as a community within our current voting system to create a DAO. This is taking away or adding to the existing system and making it more decentralized, which is better for the community as a whole, I believe. We act almost in a autonomous way or decentralized way with the ability to vote on HIPs by the community. We used to vote using Discord with a thumbs up or a thumbs down emoji on a HIP that would get proposed. And that was in the very beginning. And that was a lot harder to know what was happening within the community and big changes that would come and affect everyone within the community. We've since changed that, and we have a new voting system that is online. I think it's called Helium Vote, where you can go and vote for the HIP that's being proposed and read a little bit more about it, so you have a better understanding. And that is our current system. HIP 51 recently passed with about 96 or 97% to 3% vote. So it unanimously passed the muster as something we should do, and everyone seems to agree because it is such a valuable necessity for us to move into for Helium. So let's get into more about what a DAO is and what it consists of. So a DAO's basic components are comprised of a blockchain, which is code used as a way to record information about transactions happening on the blockchain and stored on a ledger. It has voting power, so it needs a way to vote, a mechanism for voting, so a way for users of the network to enact change. They also need proposals, or in Helium's case, Helium Improvement Proposals, a formal way to propose a change. You will also need a token or tokens, a medium of storing value for work done on-chain. You also need holders. These are people who choose to participate in the network by performing work. Holders holding tokens or staking tokens. Additionally, you need contractors. These are anyone who's involved in the building or distribution of the network. Okay, so there's also different types of DAOs, and I want to get into a brief overview of the types of DAOs that you might run into. A lot of DAOs are protocol DAOs for finance. There are also philanthropy DAOs. There's investment and venture DAOs. There are grant DAOs. There are collector DAOs. There are media DAOs, social DAOs, subDAOs, NFT DAOs, and most recently, what Helium will become, or has become, a wireless network DAO and DAOs. So there's going to be a lot of new terminology coming your way, and within Helium, we have a lot to go over within HIP 51. With HIP 51, there are DAO terminologies you should definitely know. I'll let Max explain some of these to you because they get pretty intricate. So first, Max, what is a DNT?
So a DNT, DNTs are going to be your decentralized network token. Essentially, every subDAO as each network will be called. So, for example, LoRaWAN will have its own subDAO. 5G will have its own subDAO. Eventually, there will be a Wi-Fi subDAO. Each of those subDAOs will operate using their own token as a mechanism for rewarding their participants. DNTs will be kind of a shorthand for all of those. However, each DNT will have a different name. For example, the LoRaWAN network, the proposed DNT right now is IoT. For 5G, the proposed name for their DNT is mobile. And then on and on as we go. They'll all have their own names, be their own separate tokens.
Okay. And how about DNPs?
Right. So DNP is also a subDAO to centralized network protocol. It's, as I was saying before, LoRaWAN will be its own DNP, 5G will be its own DNP, and if we do a CDN, VPN, all of those will be their own centralized network protocols. This goes back to kind of when we became a omni network protocol, meaning multiple networks will be running on the Helium network or under the Helium umbrella of networks.
Okay, perfect. And this is a new one for me. Oracles, I think they used to be called validators from what I remember. And now they've updated this?
So yeah, the oracles will be responsible for all of the proof of coverage and data transfer rewards that happen within their subDAO. They will also be responsible for keeping track of the treasury account, which we'll get into a little bit later for their subDAO. A good way to think of them is how the current validators work for HNT. But since they're not going to be doing the same type of validation, they get this new name called oracles.
Okay. And as the original validators, are they still going to be running, or?
That has yet to be decided. There's a few things that could happen. We may move to another chain. We may end up changing how proof of coverage works entirely so that it's not run on chain at all. So the validators will have very little work to actually do if they're not doing proof of coverage anymore. And by doing proof of coverage, I mean challenging and receiving the receipts for all the proof of coverage activity that's going on. What's today? June 21st, 22nd. So as of right now, I believe the plan is to move that off chain. No idea when that's going to happen or anything like that. I think it was announced earlier this week. So the validator's role once we move into a subDAO system will just be to confirm the payments between the different subDAOs. So obviously much less work. So there is a chance, especially if we do go to another chain, that those will go away. The original thought was that the current validators would become the IoT oracles. However, if proof of coverage is moving off chain, then that may not be necessary. It may just be a different group by the time that happens.
And so they'll mainly handle the wallet transactions of HNT moving across the network?
Yes, and I believe the burning of HNT to create DCs.
Got it. Okay, great. Thank you for that explanation. That hopefully clarifies a lot for people. All right, so now we're moving into the next part of learning about HIP-51 and the DAO construction. So this is the proposed Helium Network decentralized DAO and subDAO construction. We're going to try and break this down for you a little bit because just looking at it offhand, it's a little bit much. So I've gone ahead and
before we hop into this, I just want to point out that on this version of it, there are no validators at all on the HNT level. So again, to add to that point that we just made, that the validators may be going away.
Okay.
And at some point, likely will.
Noted. Thank you, Max. All right. So in this example, there will be emission epochs in which HNT is distributed to the subDAOs. These are going to be the LoRaWAN subDAO, 5G subDAO, Wi-Fi subDAO, and also HST holders. Can you explain how that emissions distribution is going to occur?
Right. So every 30 minutes there will be, or 30 blocks, which makes up an epoch, there will be an emission of HNT, just like there is now, instead of the HNT going directly to the miners. the HNT will go to the treasury funds of each individual subDAO. So what'll happen is every epoch there will be a calculation done that determines the value of that network or that subDAO, and there's a formula that takes into account the amount of hotspots, the cost to onboard those hotspots, as well as the amount of data transfer, and then also another thing called veHNT delegation, where the network and the community has the ability to signal to this kind of autonomous epoch schedule that, this particular subDAO may not have much data right now or much infrastructure built, but we as a community feel it's important. So we're going to delegate our veHNT towards that and give it a boost so that the network can survive and incentivize people to help build out that network.
Okay. And this is for the expansion of the network. And so if we break this down a little bit further, you can understand where it's going to and for what type of devices or miners. So in the LoRaWAN DAO, you'll have miners like the Bobcat 300 and the Bobcat 500. The 300 does LoRaWAN and does proof of coverage for LoRaWAN. The Bobber 500 also does LoRaWAN, but additionally does 5G. So you can hook up a radio and receive rewards for both the LoRaWAN subDAO tokens, which would be IoT, and also mobile tokens simultaneously. If you have a radio up and running to some specification, we can get into that a little bit. There's indoor radios and outdoor radios. So you see the one on the bottom is an outdoor radio. They require certain specifications to be put outside with a certificate that would come from FreedomFi. You have to send in specific information that they want to show that you've installed this properly and that the GPS antenna is set up where it is and exactly where it's supposed to be. There's also the network access point, which is just to the right of that with a FreedomFi physical SIM card. Those will all be able to receive 5G mobile tokens. These are kind of like a Wi-Fi access point you can put in a location that uses a SIM card and will receive mobile tokens eventually. But I think for now, you'll only be able to use the 5G miners like the Bobber 500. In the near future, at a later date, we'll be able to have a Wi-Fi subDAO where you'll be able to earn Wi-Fi tokens using a specific type of Wi-Fi router that will work on the network and provide Wi-Fi coverage for a specific area. But that's for another day. And then the last emissions go to the HST holders. Max, can you explain what they are?
So yeah, HST holders are just a vesting schedule for the founders and the early investors to get paid back on their early investment. So it's just another class of earnings that go to the original founders and
people who helped build out the network from the beginning and believed in it. Okay. And then, so those are the POC tiers that get pushed down. So each one of those units that we showed you here provide some sort of proof of coverage or are able to earn for having invested. And those are outlined in the green below. Then you can see here like an example of the proof of coverage. The farthest to the left using devices. So IoT devices are burning data credits to earn proof of coverage. 5G is burning data credits to provide proof of coverage. And Wi-Fi 6 will be burning data credits to provide proof of coverage. And then lastly, we have the oracles. And so the final architecture is oracles, which are basically computers in the cloud that run parts of how the blockchain operates and checking for proof of coverage. That is pretty much the construction of the subDAO. So there's moving on to the next phase of the, or next part of this is there will be 3 phases. And the first phase is outlined on the left, exactly how they have it stated in the HIP. And we want to try and break this down for you a little bit more simply so you don't have to read into it too much. But in phase 1 is when they're going to activate and allow mobile tokens to be received by the 5G miners. And there are currently no mobile tokens that can be earned until this is enacted. So this is a long time coming. And I'll let Max explain this a little bit more.
Yep. So yeah, this will allow the 5G hotspots, which many have been online since back in October of last year, haven't really been able to earn anything. This phase 1 will at least allow them to earn. There is a hopeful start date of August 1st. I don't see why we won't hit that date, but that, so that is the current thought process on when this will be enacted. At that point, we will have the mobile token. Initially, there will be an airdrop of about 50 billion mobile tokens, and then in year 1, which will span from August 1st, 2022 to August 1st, 2023, there will be an additional 66 billion of the 250 billion total supply of mobile tokens that will be emitted in that first year. So there's a very big incentive to get into 5G early. In phase 1, there is a few things that you have to do to be able to earn. Number 1, you have to have a 5G hotspot with a 5G radio. That 5G radio must be registered with the SAS, which is the Spectrum Access System, which is essentially for CBRS. It's the governing body, for lack of a better term, that makes sure that your 5G radio is operational and it's operating correctly, and it's not doing anything that's against any FCC guidelines. The next factor will be, is your hotspot located in an area that is whitelisted, which, to my understanding, it's going to be most of the United States. That's more of a concern for anyone who's not in the U.S. as CBRS is U.S. only, and there is no 5G for Helium right now outside of the U.S. And then the third and most important thing is going to be random tests via firmware that will test the connection that your 5G radio has. It's currently set to be 100 megabits down, 10 megabits up. That's to ensure that you're not just plugging it in into a backhaul that's not going to be able to support 5G, because if you have a slow backhaul, you're not going to be able to do any. You're not going to be able to pass any data reliably, so you shouldn't get rewarded for that. So we do have a QoS baked in here, and short term, that's all you need to do to earn mobile token. Eventually, in phase 2, there's going to be mappers. I don't know when those will come out. Hopefully, very soon. They're in production, and we are in a supply chain shortage. Obviously, there's going to be manufacturing delays, but whenever those do ship, and this is not an official date, this is just my personal feeling, probably December of this year. That's when we'll be able to map the network and see kind of what the coverage is like in certain areas, both for Helium 5G and then compared to, say, a Verizon or an AT&T or T-Mobile. And we'll be able to see, like, okay, here's the areas where we have really good coverage compared to other places. Here's areas where we don't have coverage. And the mappers will receive rewards for mapping, and then the hotspots or the hotspot owners will receive rewards for providing that coverage. Very similar to what we see now with Helium, but instead of hotspots communicating with hotspots, we'll have hotspots communicating with mappers.
I think we have an example of that here somewhere of the breakdown.
I believe it's 18%, but
okay. And so mappers will be in stage 2.
Yep. Yeah. It's again, I like to plan for delays. So officially it's Q3, but yeah, the mappers will receive 17% of the emissions of mobile during phase 2.
Okay.
83% will go to the hotspot operators, and then beyond stage 2, I think there's a lot of details that still need to be figured out. So going over some of those in here may not really make sense. But essentially, there will be data transfer involved. There will be different vendors will have different percentages. It's a very complex discussion and probably going to change multiple times before it's actually implemented.
Okay.
I think for this, it's best to just focus on stage 1 and stage 2. Stage 1, of course, hopefully launching soon.
So initially in stage 1, all of the rewards, the POC for 5G rewards will go directly to the hotspot owners with the specified requirements to be online active for Helium to approve release of or distribution of the 50 billion mobile tokens.
Yes, the 50 billion is, depending on the start date, will be for the period between day 1 and August 1st of 2022.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure what happens if, and again, HIT 53, this is all, in HIT 53 hasn't been passed yet. So a lot of this is going to have some moving parts, but
it will, I would expect it to pass unless something dramatic changes, correct?
Right, as would the details will be slightly different between now and when it's put up for voting.
All right. And then let's switch back. We'll go into phase 2. So this is the Helium DAO implementation part 2 or phase 2. And this phase 2 starts in August 2022. It's going to be the 3rd anniversary of the Helium Network. And this is when the larger umbrella of Helium DAO will start to expand. And we'll see different IoT token, mobile token, Wi-Fi token start to come into existence, correct?
Yep, and that's currently being built right now. You can check out on the Discord. There's a channel called Multi Tokens, and it's actually pretty cool. You can see all the developers working on it and going back and forth. They're one thing I really like about this tip is it's being built in public. So that's another area that you can see. So some of the 51, 52, 53 channels on Discord, you can see people kind of discussing and you can even participate in these discussions. The different economic changes and different ways that we can implement the DAO structure. And then in the multi-token channel is where you'll find the developers who are working on actually building this. That one you can't comment in. However, it is still pretty active, and it's pretty cool to see the developers talking about it and what they're working on. And yeah, it's pretty nice to be able to see kind of where they are in that process.
Yeah, definitely. And one of the major features about this phase 2 is this will be the moment in which the transition will start to occur where your LoRaWAN miners will no longer earn HNT. They will start to earn IoT rewards. And do I have that correct?
Yeah, so when you say that they won't earn HNT, they will earn HNT. However, there's just another step involved. They'll be earning another token called IoT, and then that token can be redeemed for HNT. There's no real difference to the end miner. Like, you'll still be earning HNT. I think that's a slight misnomer. Essentially, the IoT is just a coupon that you can use to do a few things. You can hold on to your IoT if you want to vote in the LoRaWAN subDAO, you can stake your IoT into an IoT validator to get some more rewards. You can decide that you don't care about IoT and all you want is HNT. So there will be a way for you to exchange your IoT automatically within your wallet for HNT. Eventually, there will likely be a way for you to sell your IoT. So let's say you don't care about HNT either. You can just sell your IoT on an exchange. Your DNT, which IoT is, will always be backed by your subDAO's treasury fund. So you would always receive the same amount of HNT backed IoT. So the IoT that you're earning is backed by the same amount of HNT that you would have earned anyway. And there will be people who will automatically just every 30 minutes they'll exchange it, every day they'll exchange it, and you can hold it. There's plenty of options, and it's nice because it lets you kind of dictate where you want your money to be. You want to have more control of the Helium DAO, and maybe you want to move your IoT into HNT, and then stake that into veHNT, which I think we'll probably talk about on another episode, maybe later today, to vote at the Helium DAO level, or you can keep it in the subDAO level and vote there. There's going to be a few cool things that you could do, a couple of anti-gaming things you'll be able to get rewarded for doing that using IoT. There's a lot of stuff that you can do by having this extra token involved, and some of them may not be good, some of them may be things that you don't like, and that's totally understandable. It's a very new concept, so have to do whatever you want, which I personally like. And if you want to just keep it simple, you can just every day just exchange it back into HNT.
I think to me, this is one of the most critical phases that will help grow the Helium network, not just as a single wireless network. It will become an omni network, wireless network, decentralized wireless network. And I think this is where a lot of people got it wrong, where they would claim that just switching, or what they would call pivoting, to 5G or to mobile or the other tokens, that it's taking away from your HNT or your LoRaWAN rewards. But it's going to be still some time before we get there. I mean, this is August, and they still have to implement a lot of this information and this code and distribute out how this is going to take effect. But to me, I see this as a great opportunity. This is the moment in which Helium no longer becomes just a one-trick pony. It can now grow as a whole. Imagine Amazon only ever selling books and distributing books, and never having made a Kindle or do online shopping the way they have done, and expanded into different markets, even moving into television. By expanding your market services to your consumers, you can grow the value, the total whole of what your organization can offer, and therefore the valuation of your company goes up with that. So I believe this is one of the best things that Helium can do for the network and to the growth of the network as a whole. So I'm very excited about it.
Yep, and if you do the math, based on the amount of HNT that's going to be split in the beginning, on a per hotspot basis, the average HNT earnings the day before this goes live and the day after it goes live, per hotspot per day, the earnings will be the exact same. Yes, there will be a small amount that goes to fund the 5G subDAO. But until 5G has meaningful amounts of data transfer, which is likely a year away,
we still need to bring on other carriers that would want to sign on to
exactly
be able to offload data onto the Helium network. And
so in that building phase, you're not going to really see much reduction in your Helium LoRaWAN Bobber 300 earnings. It's not going to really affect you from a HNT earnings perspective until there is a meaningful amount of data being transferred by 5G, at which point the price of HNT will be so much higher than it is today, because HNT's value is based on the amount of data that's transferred through the network. So it's, in a way, a free option for the LoRaWAN miners, in that your earnings aren't really affected until this other network may be passing way more data. And then at that point, the value of the HNT you've earned and will continue to earn goes up exponentially. So
yeah.
For the LoRaWAN miner, this is an incredibly big change, an important change that will, in the best case, earn a lot more money, and in the worst case, things will stay the same.
Yeah. I find it comical, the people that say they're going to unplug their miner, something that costs less than a light bulb to run per month or a year, and they're willing to throw away all those rewards that they wouldn't have been getting. It reminds me of like the guy who bought the 2 pizzas for 10,000 Bitcoin back in the day, and people complaining today, my earnings are 0.03, and imagine 12 years ago earning 0.03 Bitcoin a day or anything like that. You would be thrilled to have that. So the people that don't really see that, they probably don't believe in the network and might be in it for different reasons. I tend to believe in us being able to grow this network and create a multi or omni decentralized network that will grow together with these other subDAO opportunities for the value of HNT to go up. So hopefully,
and even if you're not in it for the right reason, like none of these other subDAOs are going to affect your earnings more than just more people putting on hotspots on the network within LoRaWAN. Just the math of it, that's just, you're going to lose more of your earnings, if that's what you're concerned about, by more people building out the LoRaWAN network. So none of these other networks are really going to affect the LoRaWAN network in a meaningful way until they start passing a large amount of data. And that's not to say that the LoRaWAN network won't pass a large amount of data. So, LoRaWAN's had a 3-year head start on these other networks. So, and I say this as someone with close to 1,000 Helium LoRaWAN hotspots. I'm not concerned by this. I'm not concerned by this for my fleet. So I don't think that anyone who's just running a LoRaWAN Helium hotspot should have any concern with any of these changes.
That's good to hear. I'm glad I'm not the only one. All right. We're going to move on to the next phase, which is this is where it gets a little bit more interesting and complicated. So the next phase is phase 3. A lot of this is still to be determined, but we'll try and talk about it a little bit. But this is the migration phase where we may migrate to a different blockchain for the umbrella of all of the protocols. I think it's DNP. So all of the subDAOs and DAO as a whole will move onto another chain. This will free up a lot of the extra cost in running and maintaining the chain and the transactions across the chain. This will be faster and better. It will also make it easier to bring on developers who are familiar with the code base that's not written in Erlang, which is our current language that the Helium blockchain is running on. It has a mix of Erlang and Rust in it, so the new one will probably have some sort of Rust. I think they've alluded to either Atom or Cosmos network, which is better for DAOs, or the Solana blockchain. So either one of those two seem to be the main competitors right now. And then we get into additionally staking. And I'll let Max explain this a little bit better with veHNT and veDNT.
Yep. So essentially what's going to happen is we will be using a vote escrow system in which you must lock up a certain amount, or it's up to you how much you want to lock up, but you must lock up your HNT, and then on the LoRaWAN subDAO and the 5G subDAO, right now it's proposed that there will be a VE mobile and a VE IoT that will be used for governance on those subDAO layers. Now, every subDAO has the ability to pick whatever voting mechanism they want. So just because the first two are doing it doesn't mean that this will be the case for all of them. To backpedal a little bit and kind of explain how veHNT works. Either on a specific day, maybe it coincides with a date with a vote, or just you feel like doing it. You can elect to lock up your HNT to create veHNT, and that veHNT will be a non-fungible, non-exchangeable coupon that sits in your wallet and says that you have locked up HNT to vote. Now, Jess, if you want to move to the next slide. Okay. Jess, can you actually show the governance graph there? So if you look here, thanks, on the voting power, you'll see the longer you lock up your HNT, the more voting power you get. And that's anywhere from a minimum of 6 months to a maximum of 4 years. And it's, as we can see here, it's a pretty linear graph that will show the amount of months that you've locked, and that coincides with your multiplier. So if you were to lock up one HNT for 4 years, you would get 100 votes for that one HNT. And then the pretty cool thing about this is there will be a thing called HNT or veHNT delegation. So you'll be able to, as I spoke about earlier in this video, vote for certain subDAOs to receive more rewards. And when that happens, subDAOs will reward you and everyone else in that pool that has decided to delegate their veHNT towards that subDAO. They will receive 6% of the DNT for that subDAO. DAO utility score, if Jess, if you want to scroll up to where it shows kind of how the DAO utility score, it's a 3-factor calculation where it's B times D times A, which as I spoke to earlier.
I think it's lower here. There you go.
Yeah, here.
Let me switch back to I have it better over here.
So here's the boring math part where you'll see that your DAO utility score is B times C times A. And if you notice, and we don't have to get into the specifics of all of this on this call, but the V factor is just the maximum either one or the amount of veHNT that is staked or delegated. The D factor, which is the amount of data, that's a square root, and then the A factor is a fourth root. So in this, it's going to be very important for the community to be behind certain subDAOs to determine their value. So it does lend itself to the community having a lot of say into which subDAOs are important, for one. And it's the type of thing that it's going to be the people who have the longest term view because they have locked up their HNT for the longest time will get the most voting power to determine that. So it's a very good system for determining what the people who are going to be sticking around really want to see with this network.
I definitely want to learn more about this process and how that works, and I'm sure Helium will probably give some AMA on this a little bit in the future as it develops further out.
Or Bobber Academy episode 3.
Yep, that could be it. So that's about as far as we've been informed about what's going to happen. All of this is, to be determined at some time in the future. So a lot can change between now and then, but I think this is probably a good time to close this out. I definitely am very excited for HIP 51 and the implications of it and what it means for the network and what it means to people who have put considerable time and effort into growing this network and building a decentralized wireless network. We've accomplished milestone 1, which was building a LoRaWAN decentralized global network, and that's done. We've accomplished that, and the people who helped build that have been rewarded with Helium HNT tokens, and now we grow into phase 2, which is creating a bigger umbrella for Helium as a whole to grow into, and creating more value for all of the people who initially got in early and who are still getting in today. And so I hope people appreciate that Helium is trying to grow this network and plans to become a multi or omni decentralized wireless network. And I'm definitely excited about the future and looking forward to trying out and installing new miners, new equipment, learning about this stuff and growing with the community as we move through the different phases and learn how we can reach a broader audience and provide a valuable service that is a utility. There's a lot in crypto that doesn't do much. It's either software or some sort of vaporware that doesn't have any real value. And this is one token and now a DAO that has really created value in the crypto space. And I, for one, am very excited about it. And I think, Max, you are as well. So I want to give you any last words you might want to say, and then we'll close out.
Yeah, definitely agree that there's some utility. We're not just some dog token over here. So yeah, it's a lot of exciting stuff. Happy to come back on and explain in more detail on some of the boring math stuff that will be important to understand for people. But let's get this first explainer out of the way.
Great, awesome. Thanks, Max. We really appreciate having you back again. You definitely helped clarify a lot of questions I definitely had, and I'm sure a lot of others do too. So hopefully we can do more of these explainer videos to help educate the community and give people a sense of what's coming and where we're heading next. So thanks, everyone. See you all in the next episode, and take care.